It is 7 p.m. I'm going to call to order tonight's Finance Committee meeting, April 22nd, 2024. Let's take attendance. Kevin, I don't see you yet. Steve?
Here.
All right. Tracy?
Here.
Sandy?
Here.
Joe?
Here.
Bill?
Here.
Paul?
Here.
Cody?
Here.
Zach?
Here.
I know Bonnie will be absent this evening, and I am here. Okay. Got a lot to get through tonight. I think we have presentations from Southeastern Regional and Bristol County Agricultural Schools this evening.
We have Holly McLennan and Mark Morris from Southeastern Regional to present their budget.
Hello, how are you?
Doing very well. How are you?
Good.
Excellent. Was Mark able to send over the slides?
He was.
Yes, we did see those, yes.
And Mark, you can share your screen if you want to go through your slides.
Kevin's on, Paula.
Got it.
Mark, do you have those slides? If not, I can pull them up on my computer.
And you are on mute, Mark.
Okay, well, why don't I share my screen since it looks like Mark's having a little bit of a technical issue. So hang on just a minute. I'm just pulling them up from my email, so they might not look the greatest, but they'll get the job done. Can everybody see that? Excellent. All right. So our FY 2025 proposed budget represents a 6.2% increase over the previous year. And that is, we're looking at our foundation budget is up 5.3% at just over $36.6 million. So the local assessment piece of that is $13,487,169. The second big component of our budget is our regional transportation. We did see a almost 25% increase in cost for regional transportation this year because we had secured our bus bids right at the time that COVID started. So we really have not seen the sort of fuel cost increases and labor cost increases that other school districts have experienced already. So our bus bid did go up quite a bit to $2.3 million. As you know, we are supposed to receive 100% reimbursement for our regional transportation cost. But this year, it looks like the House budget has built in about 84% reimbursement. So we use the previous school year's reimbursement to sort of guesstimate what the reimbursement rate is going to be so that we can get to an estimated local assessment. And this year, that's just over $1 million in local assessments. And we'll look at a different slide to show you how that's all broken down. But basically, Norton pays a share of the local assessment based on the percentage of enrollment at Southeastern. Every year, we budget for capital expenditures, including our MSBA bond. However, we have historically offset that with E&D to hold the total assessments to all 9 communities to $192,000. And we have done that again this year. So that brings the budget to 269,392. However, outside of the budget, we're also required to carry our bond payments. This originally was an ESCO payment and was a transition to cover the cost of our Performing Arts Center. So that is $493,250 to all 9 communities as a total to all 9 communities. We are using some E&D to pay for our OPEB, our post-retiree health benefits. That's at no additional assessment to the communities. So that the total local assessment is $15,232,041. Any questions on that before I talk about Norton's, the specifics for Norton? That makes sense? All right now.
Any questions from the finance committee members?
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Cody.
I have just a general question, having sat through, I think, a couple of these now from Southeast Regional. There's nothing really that any of the 9 communities that contribute towards this can do about this. This budget's set by the elected board of Southeast Regional, right?
So we have consistently operated at net school spending. So the minimum that we are required to spend according to the state, which is primarily our foundation budget, is primarily driven by our enrollment, which was up by 40 students, multiplied by the per pupil rate that's set by the state. And then to that, we add our regional transportation, which we're required to provide at no cost to the students, and our other capital expenditures, which are fairly standard. So as far as, is there anything you can do about it? We do operate at the minimum that we're required by statute.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions or comments?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Zach.
Holly, as you know, all the communities you serve, Brockton,
Mhm.
Mansfield, Norton, Easton, they're all in financial trouble. We're in a situation here where we're looking at a 1% increase to our local school budget. And you're coming in here asking, well, you're not asking, it's kind of like a hostage situation. We're taking 6.2%. I know it's something probably beyond your scope or any scope here, but you can send the message back to the administration there, and I graduated from Southeast, and so you can take that with a grain of salt as well. That this is frankly insulting to the surrounding communities that are all taking haircuts to come up with a 6% budget when everybody's, you know what's going on in Brockton, you know what's going on in Norton, and you present this, and not to be rude, but I'm not even sure what you're doing here, other than to tell us, yep, this is what you're paying, and you're stuck with it. And I know it's not you personally.
Respectfully, we are, again, operating at the minimum we are required to operate by the state of Massachusetts. So our increase, our 5.3% increase, is driven primarily by the increase in enrollment. We had 40 additional students last year. However, I do want to recognize that we are very sensitive to the fact that many of our communities are minimum aid communities where enrollment is not increasing. That is why we continue to operate at net school spending, so that we are trying to be as fiscally responsible as possible. The increase in our budget is primarily driven by enrollment and the increase in regional transportation costs. But I do hear what you're saying, and I am very sensitive to the fact that many of our communities are not being properly funded. That's something we've talked to our own legislators about, and I'm expecting that they will take another look at the Chapter 70 formula to see if it can be revised to be a little bit more equitable to all communities. So I do appreciate that is very difficult when other communities are not getting what they deserve. But, we did hold ourselves, again, as we have for at least 15 20 years to net school spending, as delineated by the state.
Thank you for that, Holly.
Yeah. All right, so give me just a minute. I'm pulling things up one at a time, so it may take me just a minute. So I just want to look at enrollment data. So you can see that over the course of the last 10 years, we have seen sort of a decline in Norton a little bit. It kind of goes up and down between, you know, the mid 90s to the mid 100s, but we did see a decrease this year of 10 students in Norton. So you're about 5.7% of our student enrollment. I did grab the incoming admissions data from Norton. We had 54 applications from Norton residents for the class of 2028, so the freshman class coming in October. We did offer admissions to 19 of them. 4 have declined, 13 have accepted, and we have 2 we're still pending hearing from. So overall, Norton students are admitted at a little bit higher rate than students overall. So about 30% of students this year will receive a offer of acceptance, but that number for Norton is about 38%. So, any questions about that? Nope. All right, so let me just get to the piece about your assessment. Sorry if I'm pulling these up one at a time. There we go. Okay, so when we look at each of our communities, you will see that Norton is 5.7% of our enrollment. So the minimum contribution is just under $1.6 million. Your portion of the bond payment is $28,293. Net transportation costs for Norton is $60,781, and the net capital costs are $11,013 for a total assessment of $1,692,899. That is a decrease of $24,986 from last year. Any questions about that? Okay, and then the final slide I just want to show you is for each of our students, it does cost about $23,000 to educate them. And communities pay more or less of that $23,000 based on the state's formula. So you can see that Norton pays about $17,598 for each student that goes to Southeastern. And I always provide this as just a comparison, so you can see how it's broken down. Brockton continues to pay the highest amount total because they have the highest number of students. So,
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Kevin.
I just want to go on, I mean, the highest total and gross, but at a rate, I mean, their pie's getting split up to everybody else.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Cody.
I believe we've got our schools, talking to us later. I don't believe our cost per pupil is anywhere near 17,000, like however ours gets divvied up. Another thing that was brought to my attention, is I believe everyone on this slide has some sort of fees. Are there fees at Southeast Regional for anybody? Do you have sports fees, activities fees? Like,
No.
we're feed to death, and and our fees are going to go up because we can't afford to educate our own kids. Is that the case at Southeast?
We do not have fees at Southeastern. In many cases, we're not even allowed to request fees. For example, we can't charge any fees for transportation. We can't charge fees for most things, to be honest with you. As a regional school district, as a Title I school, we have a lot of restrictions on fees that we can charge for students. The cost of educating a student at a vocational school based on the types of equipment that we have to maintain, the size of our building, the additional costs associated with operating large building systems like ventilation systems, dust collection systems, medical waste systems, getting rid of metal waste several times a month is why a Chapter 74 vocational student costs more to educate than a student at an academic high school.
Just a follow-up question to that. I realize, and don't take this as me not appreciating the fact that like this, that the education that they're receiving is awesome. And I just wish that we could dictate to ourselves that we could collect the amount that you're collecting per pupil. Like you get to charge all of the amounts and tell the communities that send students to you how much they're going to pay, when we don't pay ourselves that amount. And it's just like, it's kind of crappy that, you know, it's so much better because you can dictate the terms and, you know, as a share of the amount
Well,
of
just
usage.
respectfully, we don't dictate the terms. The state
But-
dictates the terms.
Right,
Correct?
but-
Like we base our budget on the minimum we're required according to the state. And we are trying to be good partners by doing that, by living with net school spending. But we have seen an increase in enrollment over the last 10 years. And so we have traditionally seen increases in our budget. But, you know, respectfully, we are not dictating what we collect. That is part of the formula. I don't necessarily think that the formula is entirely fair to everybody. You know, but so I do want to make that clear that we are not, Southeastern is not dictating to people what we are collecting. It is based on the Chapter 70 formula
Yeah,
for
I mean,
vocational students.
the total budget is set. I understand that the state sets net school spending. I hope you have a lot more room because as all of these communities continue to shed teachers and programs and clubs and sports and everything else, you're going to get a lot more demand for people that can come in and, you know, I don't know what your maximum enrollment is and what you can possibly handle, but whatever you're planning on, I would increase it.
Well, right now we're at maximum capacity. We have about 1,600 students in the high school. As you know, we have a post-secondary program as well that has about 40 full-time students. But we are right now at capacity in the school.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Zach.
Holly, what is your acceptance rate? How many of the students that apply, how many do you accept?
So as of this morning, we had 1,344 applications for the 9th grade, and we can accept 415. So it's about 30%.
And is that, so you have a group of kids, do you have to divide it evenly, certain percentages per
No.
town? Or is it just by grades and,
Now, our regional agreement does not require a certain percentage by town. It's based on, so we have a scoring rubric based on grades, attendance, behavior, a recommendation from a teacher or a guidance counselor, and a personal interview with the student. And based on that, a student receives a score and they're admitted based on their score, regardless of whether they live in Brockton or Easton, or which is why you will see, you know, some years your assessment may go up and some years it may go down because the number of students from Norton can fluctuate. But traditionally, we've seen about 60 to 65% of our applications come from Brockton, and about 60 to 65 of our students are from Brockton. And it tends to break down that way for all the other communities as well. Whereas the percentage of applications that we're receiving generally reflects the percentage of students we accept. So, and I do keep an eye on that to make sure that nothing's getting out of whack. with those things. But the vast majority of our applicants and students come from Brockton. And then from there, Stoughton is the next largest one, East Bridgewater. But we do keep an eye to make sure that roughly the same percentage of students who apply from Norton are represented in the population that's enrolled.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Kevin.
I was curious, how many students are on IEPs at Southeastern Regional, like, and how does it stack up to the demographic splits by town? Are there any towns that are over or underrepresented when you would cross-section it with IEPs?
So this year we started the year, our October 1st number was like 15.3%. But once we have enrolled students, we typically do see a spike in IEPs. So I know we ended the year with about 25 more students on IEPs than when we started. So the state does look at that data and they compare our total special education population to the total special education population in our region. And we are performing in terms of how we rank with the demographics generally. It's roughly the same. If you look town to town, we often have many more students on IEPs from a given town than they would have in their own high school. But I don't know the number right off the top of my head for Norton. But it's something I do look at every year.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Joe.
Holly, forgive my ignorance, but I don't have children. Can you define for me what net school spending is?
It is the minimum amount that the state of Massachusetts says we have to spend to educate a student. So for one student, the per pupil cost this year is $23,000. And then to that, you add your regional transportation cost and your allowable capital cost, and that is net school spending.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Cody.
And Holly, I've done a little bit of study on this, but I mean, Chapter 7 is about as complex a calculation as you can find, and I think it's intentionally that way. But for individual towns, it's based on per capita income and the adjusted values of homes in each one of those. So for your net school spending, is it taking all 9 communities and taking all of it and then putting a weighted average across all of it? Or how is it done at a regional school like this compared to a
I
town?
think I have. Mark, do you know the details on that? I'm going to see if I can pull up I thought I had the sheet that showed that. Maybe not. So our net school spending is based on our total student population. I'm sorry, I thought I had that sheet available, but I don't have it in front of me. Our foundation budget is based on our total enrollment times the per pupil cost. That's our foundation budget. Then that budget is apportioned based on the percentage of students and then also taking into account their per pupil, their Chapter 74 breakdown. So it is a complicated formula. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's not. So that's why Brockton pays less than per pupil, but Southeastern is receiving the same amount of money for that student as we receive for a student from Norton. It's just that Brockton is receiving more Chapter 70 aid to pay for that student than Norton is.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think the best analogy, and I didn't come up with this analogy, is that it's like when you pay your property tax. We all pay a different amount of property tax, but we each get to go to the public school. We each get to, we each have access to the same roads. We each have, so that's the same basic premise around the per pupil aid. It is based on relative wealth of the community. as determined by a very complex formula.
All right, does anyone else have any questions for Holly or Mark? All right, hearing nothing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm sharing the Bristol County Agricultural High School for FY '25. There's two aspects of their budget. Tuition, which is $4,017 for 15 students, or $60,255. And then the debt assessment, which is $5,979.66 per student. For 15 students, it's $89,694.90, or $149,949.90.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, Sandy.
Hi, Mike. Did this change from the original projections? Did they increase it? Because originally I think we had 148. Not that it's that big difference, but did they change
They had sent us earlier a range, and we took the middle of the road, but of course they went to the high end, so it is slightly higher than previously.
We don't have anyone from
No.
school presenting to us tonight.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Bill.
Hey, Mike. There
Yep.
seems to be a reoccurring theme that they never show up.
Never.
I was gonna say that, yeah.
I've never seen anyone from Bristol Aggie.
And
Madam Chair,
we have
Yeah,
no
Zach.
recourse to that?
Sorry.
Not if, I mean, we try and get them to show up, and they just never do.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Can do about
Yeah,
that.
Zach.
As I said earlier, and I wasn't trying to be rude, but it's a hostage situation. They don't have to show up. Here's the bill. You got to pay it. You have no choice. And, I could say a few off-color words, but you know what they're saying to you, basically.
Did they send anything about the increase or decrease in students over from last year to this year? I don't think I saw anything.
Let me see.
Is it typically around 15?
Yeah, it's always right around that number. Let me see if I have last year's students. Yeah, FY '24 was 15 also.
Huh. Anyone have any comments or questions about this? Seems like it is what it is.
All right,
Right. Moving on.
all right.
Budgets.
Budgets. So, this first page is Select Board, Personnel Services and Expenditures, Town Manager, Finance Committee. Oh, you already did Finance Committee and Reserve Fund. Town Accountant, assessor, and treasurer collector.
Okay, anyone have questions about any of the departments on this page?
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Cody.
I'm curious why the column there for town manager recommended changed. I think when we voted on that, it was 119 and change, not 117 and change.
Right, when you reduced it to 100, it was 119. I had to take $2,000 and move it into the planning budget.
Anyone else have questions? Hearing nothing. Chair would entertain a motion to recommend these budgets.
Madam Chair? Madam Chair?
Yes, Joe. Sorry, can you hear me?
I make a motion that we accept the following budgets. Select Board, account number 122, line 510, Personnel Services, in the amount of $76,570, and line 570, Charges and Expenditures, in the amount of $2,200, for a total of $78,770. Account 123, Town Manager, line 510, Personnel Services, in the amount of $310,517. Charges and Expenditures, line 570, in the amount of $22,500, for a total of $333,017. Which two do we do? Finance Committee, Reserve Fund? Okay.
Yep.
Town Accountant, account 135, line 510, Personnel Services, in the amount of $246,451. Line 520, Purchase of Services, in the amount of $30,000. And line 570, Charges and Expenditures, in the amount of $3,120, for a total of $279,571. Account 141, Assessors, line 510, Personnel Services, in the amount of $230,405. And line 570, Charges and Expenditures, in the amount of $38,180, for a total of $268,585. And account 147, Treasurer Collector, line 510, Personnel Services, in the amount of $294,143. Charges and Expenditures, line 570, in the amount of $51,331, for a total of $345,474. And do we need a total, or are we good?
No. Do I hear a second?
Second,
All right, going to the vote. Kevin,
Do we have a question?
oh, does someone have a question? No? Okay, Kevin?
My vote's yes.
Okay. Steve?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Yes.
Joe?
No.
Bill?
yes,
Paul?
Yes.
Yes.
Zach?
No.
Okay, I am a yes. So we have 8 yes, 2 no for these budgets.
Okay, the next page is data processing. The town clerk, conservation, and planning board.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Cody.
Mike, can you remind me the personnel services on the town clerk? That 120, is that the elimination of the assistant that was hired?
No, that's in anticipation of the current town clerk retiring and coming back on a part-time basis, reduced hours.
Is there a plan to hire a full-time town clerk in this fiscal year, this next fiscal year?
Not right now, there isn't. Right now, the plan is that the town clerk will work 24 hours a week. And we'll have the full-time assistant and the part-time person.
Any other questions about these?
M-
Budgets?
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Bill.
and Mike, we're comfortable with that?
I think so. Based on the environment right now, trying to find a full-time town clerk. I think it would be good to go this route for now. And then move later on, well, after this next fiscal year, see what it looks like after a year.
And with the town clerk going to, was it 24 hours, is the expectation every day or just certain days?
I would anticipate Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays.
Madam Chair. Is she retiring at the end of the fiscal year and that 120 is for 52 weeks of 24 hours a week? Or does she have a retirement date set and that's midway through the year?
The retirement date would be at the end of the fiscal year. And that salary would be for her and the part-time, the other full-time staff person and the part-time.
And is that 24 hours going to be enough for running the election in November, as well as a potential special election? And I guess that the special election would happen before the fiscal year we discussed.
Yeah, that was what I discussed with her beforehand. The main thing, we want to make sure that she is there running the elections.
If she's set for 24 hours a week does this number have a built-in expectation that the weeks leading up to November might require overtime?
We would move her hours around based on what's needed during elections. So she may work more hours on a week when there's an election and less hours the week after that. Normally, she would take a vacation after election.
Okay, so it's 48 hours of a pay cycle, or 96 a
Mhm.
month.
Right.
Yeah. We're gonna miss her,
Madam Chair.
that's for sure.
Was that Bill?
So Mike, the part-timer and the assistant,
Mhm.
they're subject to overtime. They're not, obviously the part-timer isn't, but the assistant isn't salaried, or is she?
He would not, we don't anticipate paying overtime. If there's any extra time, it would be comp time. So right now, the salaries for the two permanent positions would be $99,526, and the part-timer is $20,907.
And no overtime, just comp in some fashion.
Right.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Sandy.
Mike, can you explain, maybe you did before, why the data processing went down, the personnel services?
Just because of what we had to do to cut the budget, we reduced the amount of hours for the one person working in that department. And also under charges and expenditures, we had to reduce that also.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Cody.
Mike, can you just give an example of like what the ramifications of that means? Like you're reducing data processing, what does that entail? And what is it going to have any impact on the general public? Or is this just going to be internal?
It could because as you know, Charlene working in that position posts everything on the town website, organizes all these virtual meetings. So there could be some impact there.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Kevin.
Mike, on data processing, how do I reconcile this to the one that we went over in March? Like, the original proposal was 408. This says they requested 468 and we landed at 393.
Mm-hmm. Stick to it.
I think it was in our March 11th packet.
So as I said, we reduced the hours of the staff person from the 44,155 to the 29,436. And then under charges and expenditures, right now we have a staff person from MX Consulting 3 days a week, and that's going to be reduced to 2 days a week.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Bill.
So is this a department that would essentially kind of oversee, you know, data breaches and whatnot, or making sure that we don't have data breaches, that kind of stuff? So
we still have that with MX Consulting. They handle all that for us.
So they would just be troubleshooting if an employee was having
Right.
difficulties. So the troubleshooting will only happen so many days a week versus. Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Cody.
Mike, I'm looking at the sub sheet
Mhm.
balance. So I just wanted to double check. We're cutting hours on the employee, presumably if anything needs to get done and we don't have the budget and the hours for them to do it. Then the professional services costs would go up. It looks like you've maybe accounted a little bit for that. Is that where that would land on the professional services?
So under expenses, we also reduced professional services from 310 was the request to 291, and which is actually a slight increase over last year.
Yeah, it's about 14,000
Yeah,
higher than last year. That's why I'm asking. Is that the expectation there is that the professional services cost will go up slightly because we'll have to outsource that work if it needs to get done?
No, that's not the anticipation at all, because we've also reduced the hours for MX Consulting, the in-house hours. But all they handle still off-site, all the other, there's no reduction in all our licensing and permitting with them for our cybersecurity and other software.
So, Madam Chair,
Yeah, so,
so kind of jumping back to, data security and all that stuff.
Mhm.
Should the unpleasant happen, that there's no real buffer here, that this would be some sort of, reserve fund transfer or whatever to cover those costs, because we've reduced the hours of so many pieces.
Well, if something happens, we have insurance. We don't know, what's going to happen and whether it'll all be covered, but we do have insurance for any cyber attacks.
Madam Chair.
yeah, Zach.
I guess, touching on what Bill's saying here and just thinking of this whole thing, over the last week, I'm inclined to vote no on all these budgets, to be honest with you. Are we doing our job here? I mean, is the job, if the job of this finance committee is it's 1% of the town and 1% of the schools, wash our hands of it and wrap it up. This should be done in one meeting. I mean, but I think if you were sitting at your kitchen table and you were having financial crisis and you said, well, do we put food on the table or do we pay for a college education? Well, obviously you're going to put food on the table first. And we're not doing that. I mean, we're talking about closing fire stations and removing, school resource officers from the schools. Well, I have a kid in school. It's very important to me that my son gets a good education like any other parent. But it's much more important to me that he come home every night. So are we here setting priorities, or is just if this is just a 1% of the town and 1% of the school, just vote one vote as approved, as written, and be done with it. If not, I think the job of this committee is to go through it and say, what are the priorities? But public safety for me should be the priority. Education should be the next priority. And then everything else. Right now, we're just going 1%. It's a 1% budget. And this is just semantics, really.
So,
we're going to
Zach,
spend,
Not to interrupt you, but
No, go ahead, I'm done.
I totally hear your point. Right now, we're going through the 1% increase budgets. This is what we have to work with. This finance committee is more than welcome to do our own recommendation here. We don't have to be rubber stamping exactly what the town manager recommendation is. If you see that a certain line item, that's why we go line by line or page by page in this instance. If you see a certain line item that you think should get less, so we can put that money somewhere else. We did that last Wednesday with the reserve fund account, hoping to maybe give the library $17,000. So instead of voting no, you could always request an edit to these budgets. Because this is what we have to work with the 1%.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Cody.
Kind of to Zach's point, and one of the things I was going to ask once everybody got through kind of processing each one of these lines. I didn't know that the town clerk was retiring. I don't think that necessarily changes my stance on this. That 120,000 includes a position that was created and funded out of free cash in the fall of last year. And when we're talking about laying off, I think last in, first out is a fairly standard rule. And the fact that it was funded, that position was funded with non-recurring revenues, I would say, what'd you say, Mike, 20,000 for that
Yeah.
Individual.
20,000, yes.
So however much was built into to that town clerk, I mean, we've got a full-time assistant to the town clerk and, Lucia on reduced hours, as part of the retirement plan. But that's one of the first places that I would look to cut if we're talking about, laying people off. Every little bit here is gonna make a difference, and that's fairly standard practice, I think.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, Sandy.
I mean, Cody, doesn't reducing the town clerk's office kind of offset that? You want to get rid of now a half-time position and another half-time position. So now you're going down to less than what we had coming into last fall's town meeting. Right? I mean, I get your point that it should be reduced because we added that position, but it sounds like it already is being reduced with the town clerk's position being moved to half-time.
Except it is now being used to set, like, that position is now established. It was a brand new position that was created. Now we still have town clerk. We're gonna have to replace the town clerk with another full-time town clerk at some point. We have the assistant to the town clerk, and we have a part-time assistant. That part-time assistant, like, we're talking about eliminating positions. When we're going back to the budget and looking at this next year and year beyond, we've established a third position within that department using revenues that are not recurring. And when we come back to, fully staff the position, you're now carrying 3 positions where, historically there had only been 2. That's the whole point here is, if we're making cuts and we're eliminating positions. The public health nurse is going to be completely eliminated. We haven't been able to fill it at the position it's at. We're talking about eliminating positions. That's just where my head is.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, Sandy.
Just to respond, I mean, I agree, Cody. I think if we get to the point where we have a full-time town clerk again, we need to revisit that part-time position. But right now I'm seeing a total of 2, right? And those 2 half-times are cheaper than 1 full-time because now we're not paying some of those benefits. I do hear you, though, that when we go back to a full-time town clerk, that needs to be revisited, especially if we are not able to pass an override.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Mike.
just if I could, on that part-time position, it was in the budget for years and it just wasn't filled for a couple of years. So it's not a new position. It had been there. And the town clerk coming back for 3 days a week is based on knowing what the staff is in that office. So if we're not going to have the part-time position, there's no guarantee that the town clerk's going to come back. So then we're going to have to move this back up to, more like $142,000 a year to cover a full-time clerk.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Cody.
that's essentially exactly my point. We were running 117 and 122 in the prior years. We're carrying 142 in the current year because we added that third position. So if it's not happening this year where, the 120 is the Band-Aid over a year, when we replace a full-time and Lucia's completely gone and replaced with another full-time town clerk, the expectation there needs to return back to 2 positions, not 3.
And right, I think Sandy made that clear that could happen at that time.
Madam Chair?
All right. Yeah, Sandy.
Can I ask a question on planning?
Yep.
Mike, did that, I see that change that went back up. Is that
Yeah.
like the new contractual salary for our new town planner?
It is. So there's 2 salaries in that department, the full-time planner and an administrative assistant for the planner.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Zach.
Mike, who did we hire? I didn't hear that we had a new planner.
Paul DiGiuseppe is back.
Yep, Paul
Back for more, huh?
Paul
Yep.
Giuseppe is back.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Kevin.
I know we've gotten to some of the details on some of these lines. I just fundamentally struggle when I go back to the meeting packet where we meet with the department heads and they present a more detailed budget that rolls to a number. We get a final budget that doesn't match that. And this final budget we vote on is summarized to two accounts, 510 and 570. There's no bridge as to what's in and what's out. I can't understand what's changed. And so if the goal is for us to have a 3 to 4 hour meeting to rehash everything, this way it's presented serves that end well. But I don't want to keep everybody on the phone for 4 hours to ask questions we asked a month ago to try to figure out what changed.
Madam Chair, we
Yes,
did
Sandy.
get a breakdown too, Kevin. We got
In
the
your,
new, got the
right,
new
in your
packet.
packet.
Line by line.
Same
Yes,
as we got before. They're kind of, you have to scroll down a lot to some of the documents.
All right. Thanks.
Would it be helpful if we brought that up as we went through these budgets?
sure.
Does the group want to see that as we do it, as we go through?
And I can bring it up. All right, where were we?
Legal services to planning board, wherever that page
Yeah.
is.
Let me get back up. So I think we started with data processing.
Yeah.
So anyone that data processing, town clerk, those two had changes. If anyone wants me to bring those up.
Do we
Can.
want to see a breakdown? Does the group want to see the breakdown? Anyone?
So there's the town clerk.
Anyone have questions on this? Hearing nothing?
And data processing.
Questions on data processing? Right. Hearing nothing.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions about these particular budgets? Or I can entertain a motion to recommend.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Joe.
given the discussion we've had on these various budgets, does anyone want me to go through them individually in the motion rather than the whole page? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Yep.
I'm fine with the whole page.
Right. Got one vote for the whole page. These particular budgets, I'm fine with the whole page.
All
All
right.
right, Joe.
I make a motion that we accept the following budgets. Number 155, data processing, line 510, personnel services in the amount of $29,436. And line 570, charges and expenditures in the amount of $363,771 for a total of $393,207. Budget 161, town clerk, line 510, personnel services in the amount of $120,433, and line 570, charges and expenditures in the amount of $6,075 for a total of $126,508. Budget 171, Conservation Committee or Commission, either one. 510, Personnel Services in the amount of $148,999, which seems odd to me, but line 570, Charges and Expenditures, $14,050 for a total of $163,049. And budget 175, Planning Board, line 510, Personnel Services in the amount of $152,605, and charges and expenditures, line 570, in the amount of $3,525 for a total of $156,130.
Madam Chair, wait,
Yes, Cody.
I have one question on the planning board. Because we're looking at, when we were looking at the request at 141,383, that amount included part-time wages plus a salary for the vacant, which has now been filled. Has any of that, the part-time wages, were any of those offset by now the fact that we have a full-time position filled and Paul is back? Were any of those hours decreased for the part-time position where maybe they had been increased where he was carrying an additional load from not having a full-time department head?
We didn't have a part-time position.
There was no paid position in the planning department?
Sorry,
Planning
not
board?
part-time.
All that was in the planning department was the administrative staff person.
So
And that was
that,
part-time?
which is, so it's a full-time position.
That's a full-time position,
Oh, okay.
the staff person.
Okay, it's still an hourly full-time position, right?
Yes,
That- Was there overtime built into that number?
no.
Okay,
The staff person did get a stipend for handling the department by themselves for a time.
and
But
that was 10,029 that's not carried forward.
Um,
I was
I'm not-
pulling back the old, the 100 budgets, salary sheet. I was looking at what was carried forward if
whatever,
if that's
there-
been removed, then
there's been no one in the position, the full-time planner position, so whatever money's left over in that position at the end of the year just goes back as free cash.
right, but is the stipend being carried in the number that was carried forward from the fiscal year 24? Is the number that we're carrying in that, was anything transferred over for stipend to offset the vacancy?
Not into FY 25, no.
Okay, I'm satisfied. Bill, you want to second it?
Second,
Kevin.
These
Kevin,
still don't tie to what I saw in the packet on March 11th, so I have to vote no.
okay. Steve,
Yes.
Trace,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes,
Joe,
Yes.
Bill,
yes,
Paul,
Yes.
Cody,
Yes.
Zach,
No.
I'm a yes. Okay, so 8 yes, 2 no for this one. as well.
Okay, on this page is municipal building expense, police department, fire department, and emergency medical services. You voted the other budgets.
All right, any questions or comments on these? Anyone want to see a breakdown of any of these? Mike, for me, it would be helpful if, as we're going through now, just because, you know, the last 2 pages we've noticed like there were reduction of hours of some staff.
Yep.
So it'd be good to know kind of like if you could explain from your point of view the impact of any of these reductions for any of these departments.
So nothing's changed on these budgets, but obviously here we have police and fire where the personnel services has been reduced. And as they've said before, that'll be an impact in filling shifts. With the fire department, you know, they've talked about the possibility that this Chartley station will be closed. And the police department, I know he has talked about looking at times where he may have to put someone on the street that normally would be in the station. And during slow times, if there's a shift to vacant, that the person from the station may have to go out on the road. So definitely impacts to both those departments.
All right, thank you for that. Any questions, comments on these budgets?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Bill.
Actually, two, the police department also, you know, explicitly said maybe the station gets closed, so that's still on the table.
Yeah, you mentioned week hours would be possibly closed like during the day on the weekends or something.
Okay. You know, my favorite question on this page is the municipal building as it pertains to the existing town hall and the cost associated if we are keeping it standing despite the vote by the town to get rid of it. And despite the presentations of saying how decrepit and dangerous it was to keep standing. What is the cost to maintain that thing if it's going to stay up?
So the only cost to maintain it would be to keep the heat on low. But other than that, we're not going to be keeping the lights on. We're not going to have people in there until they make a decision on what they're going to do.
But
They're still reviewing that. I know the building committee is still reviewing that.
But wasn't it, I know it was said early on, because I might have been chair when some of that was starting to be discussed, that the cinder blocks are in such disrepair that, you know, the whole place could crumble. So there is a cost beyond just heat to making sure that it doesn't start to crumble and hurt someone who's walking right past it. So that there's got to be some cost in there that we're not recognizing.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Paul.
so Bill, to that point, Mike, I thought there was definitely funds in the account still to take it down. So why is there a question about doing it?
That's because when they were doing going out to bid, they had cut that from the package. So that has not been bid yet. So it has to go back out to bid for that portion of the project.
Right, but isn't the money there though? So they should be doing that. And I mean, it sounds to me like there's a question whether they're even going to attempt to do it.
I guess the question is, what funds will they have available at the end, and what are the new bids gonna come in at?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Zach.
So, as I've said before in this committee, that the protection of life and property should be the number one priority. I think if we don't fund that, we've failed as a community. It's life and death, and I think that comes before anything else. So I'm going to go against something I've said previously, and I'm going to make a motion, if there's a second on the table, to move 200,000 from stabilization to the fire department and 100,000 from stabilization to the police department. That's my motion. Excuse me, if there's a second.
Madam
Is there a
Chair,
second?
can we discuss before we get to a second, like discuss the motion? Or does it need a second? Because-
I'll do a second for discussion purposes, Cody.
Would we be taking a vote to discuss this? I think we can just discuss this.
No,
And
you
then
just-
we would do a
Yeah.
vote.
Yeah, you can
a motion
discuss
and
it.
a second to vote on it. So we can discuss it first.
Yeah, it's the usual process. Motion second, any discussion, then a vote.
So we've got a second from Paul, so we got to vote on the second, and then if it passes, then we can discuss.
Okay, so we're voting just to discuss this, not to transfer money, correct?
I don't think you don't need a vote.
You don't
You
have
don't need
to
a vote.
vote to
Yeah,
discuss. You can just,
okay.
Now
So
that
we are
there's a
just gonna
second on the
discuss
table,
this.
there can be open discussion.
Okay,
So,
we're having
Zach, you-
open discussion about the topic that Zach brought up about transferring money from stabilization to police and fire, correct, Zach?
That is correct. 200,000 to the fire department, 100,000 to the police department.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Joe.
Zach, just curious, why those numbers?
Just round up from what they're asking for. The fire department is the police department, is asking for 291, and they're getting 418. So just round numbers, 100,000. I mean, you can do the math and go to exact what they're looking for. Same thing with the fire department. They're asking for 4,960,000. The town manager is recommending 4.7. Just round numbers. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Cody.
Zach, I certainly appreciate the notion and what we're trying to do. I think I've learned from what we did last year, pulling the 700,000 from stabilization for the schools on the justification last year was it was a one-off year. The transportation costs went through the roof, the special ed costs went through whatever it was. And we pulled from that, and it just set us farther behind on what we're capable of carrying year over year. And stabilization is not going to solve the issue here for me. I'm all for pulling it from other line items. I'm 100% on board with, like, let's talk about eliminating other departments, other positions that are not critical. We want to talk about that. I'm all for it. I just using the stabilization as a Band-Aid to try and kick it continues to make it worse year over year. And I would rather us talk about, it looks like we're gonna have to go against the town manager's recommendations and say, let's find 100,000 for police, let's find 200,000 for fire. Where are we gonna pull it from? I
Yeah.
don't think pulling 300,000 from stabilization is gonna solve this issue.
I agree with Cody. Doing this Band-Aid fix, same thing we did last year. I'm definitely against doing that. I will 100% vote no. But I also agree with Cody in that, as I mentioned before, as you see on the right-hand column, the Finance Committee recommendations, we can change what it says in the column next to it for town manager recommendations. We can put what we want there. If you want to take it from another budget another department, I'm all for that as well.
Madam
I
Chair?
will not vote in favor of taking money from stabilization again, like we did last year for just a Band-Aid fix.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Zach.
I have no problem entertaining, anybody wants to make a motion to take it from someplace else, that's up to them. I'm just saying, this is very different, to Cody's point, from funding schools. This is a life and death situation. When you close fire stations, if one person dies for that incident, all this money is irrelevant. We are talking life and death situations. That's what you're taking off the table now. You tell me what's in this budget in any department that's worth more than somebody's life. And I don't care where that money comes from, but tell me any department in this town that's worth more than somebody's life because we closed the fire station. I mean, you guys want to live with that? That's fine, but I won't have any part of it. And I don't care where the money comes from. Close down whatever you want. These departments should be funded first, in my view.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else?
Madam Chair, the point about where it comes from, point 1, point 2 is if we have a disagreement on some of these budgets, now we've voted on 2 pages of priors where now we may want to revisit. It's kind of like it's tough to unring the bell when we're halfway through these, when these things come up. I don't have a solution for this budget cycle, but
Madam Chair.
Does complicate things. Yes, Cody.
I'm just like quickly trying to work through all the budget numbers that we have, all the budget sheets. Mike, can you remind me what inspection does? 241?
What inspection does?
Yeah,
So, inspection is, your building commissioner, your local inspector, and your, water inspector, and your electrical inspector, and your gas and plumbing inspector.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Paul.
Cody, I just, you sent out an article or a piece about the Mansfield schools, and you had a question about the languages in kindergarten from the article. And my takeaway from that whole article, which I found like bizarre, was that for decades, quote unquote, they were able to live with a 3% increase in the Mansfield schools. And I'm just trying to figure out why over the past 10, 15 years have been such a disconnect in Norton with the school funding, where they've been getting, the 3, 4, 5% every year, and still we seem like we're behind everyone else. So I don't know what the issue is, because I'm not a school person, but I'm just trying to, that's what I took away from that article. I found it surprising that they could, their quote was, for decades, live with 3%. And we haven't done that since that I'm aware of for years in the school system. And that's part of the ways we're in the financial problems we're at is because it seems like we're always struggling to try to come up with more. So that was just a side comment where we're discussing everything else,
Madam Chair?
Yes, Sandy.
As someone in the Mansfield schools, I can tell you that Paul, I wouldn't say it's decades. There was an override many years back. And then since that override, the population's been decreasing. So, they're talking about, and we've seen some cuts, and not that that's not terrible to see, my colleagues getting let go, but the class sizes are not impacting anywhere near what they are, because our population has gone down. Our population, really went up to a huge peak several years ago, and it's been dropping ever since. So we've been letting go teachers as the population has been dropping. Much different scenario than.
Well, are we down 1,000 students as well, Sandy, in Norton?
I don't think it's that much. I mean, we're down, I would say, I forget the total population, but the high school has dropped down in Mansfield several hundred. So it's again, the class sizes are still way better than what they are in Norton. So it's not, you know, you see cuts being happening, but you've also got to look at the fact that their population's dropped, and so their class sizes really have not been impacted by that.
Madam Chair.
Exactly.
Paula,
Paul,
do you want to respond to Sandy? No. Okay, Cody. go
No,
ahead.
but thank you, Sandy. I just thought that Norton had a drop in over 1,000 students in the last 10 years or whatever, too.
that's, Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Cody.
that has been a refrain from anybody that's anti-schools for as long as I've been here. The fact is that the school numbers have been fairly steady, hovering around 2,400 kids, 25, 24, 23. It's consistently around that number. If you want to take a single height year of like when they hit 3,000, then you're down 600, but that was like 15 years ago or something.
I think in the packet that Dr. O'Neill gave us, I don't even know, one of our joint meetings, it was projected that our students count was going to increase like 7 or 8% in
Yeah,
the upcoming
and
like
so-
5-year plan.
To answer Paul's initial question, it's been death by 1,000 cuts. You don't see it because you don't have kids in the schools, but they cut 12 positions last year. Then, you know, there was a lot of stink made about saving the languages for middle school or saving the music department for middle school. They saved part of it, but there were still 12 positions eliminated last year. And year before that, and year before that, and year before that, it's been little. That's how we have existed and continued to go for the past, 10, 15 years, is because little cuts are made here and there. Fees are increased here or there. Programs are cut here or there. And it's just little by little. And everybody forgets about it. And if you don't have kids in the school and it's not your kid that's directly impacted on it, then it's something that goes unnoticed. And, it will definitely get noticed this year when you're eliminating 30 positions. So,
No, I appreciate that, Cody.
Madam Chair, if we could
Yeah.
get back to
Right.
trying to find money to fund police and fire as opposed to unnecessary, or I won't say unnecessary, I'll say less necessary things. I hate to be the guy that's picking on the dog officer, but if it comes down to the needing a dog officer versus needing firefighters to fight a fire or respond to an emergency, sorry, that's $107,000 to eliminate that department.
Yep.
Madam Chair,
Rather spend $107,000 on police or fire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Joe, go ahead.
so I know that we heard from the Southeast Regional earlier. Mike, what would happen if we didn't fund what they asked? What happens in that situation?
So unless a majority of the towns agree to vote against the budget, it would be assessed to us. We would have to pay it.
It does seem like a hostage situation.
Yeah.
And I understand what Holly was saying, but the state is not being equitable about these things in any way, shape, or form.
Joe, I won't be on her Christmas card list this year.
No, you won't.
You can't go to any alumni events.
And I did some research in town of Mansfield, Pastor Norberg back in June of 2000.
Oh, thank you, Peter.
So, Madam Chair, just a point of order, should we have a vote on Zach's motion? Or he can rescind it, either way.
Yeah, Zach, if you still want to make that motion, we can.
No, I think it's important that we have a motion so the residents do understand where the finance committee stands on this,
On taking money from stabilization
on not fully funding the police and fire department.
by taking money from
Well, I think there's-
stabilization though specifically.
Yeah, I think there's two,
Specifically in my motion, yes.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Bill.
I don't want, this committee to, sink down to, fighting each other. But, I'm not against fire. I'm not against police. I understand what Zach is saying. But there is really no simple fix. And, like an override, hate an override, that is kind of the only fix. Anything else, again, you're going to be in this situation next year. So you whack 100,000, you eliminate the dog officer this year. What do you do next year? We're always going to be in the situation. So, I'd love to vote in favor of what Zach is proposing, but I also don't want it, conveyed in the minutes or in the public's eyes that if I say no to it, that I'm against police and fire, because that's not the case. It's the case of there's no money.
Mhm.
So I don't see how you vote on it. You take it out of stabilization. As we're trying to go out to bond long-term projects, you're going to hurt that prospect and have higher interest rates. So that's not a fix. That's going to make things worse. Unless we all just stop with this, hey, we're not going to touch free cash, there's no money. So, I'd support Zach's thing if he said take it out of free cash.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Zach.
Mike, what is the free cash balance after all this?
We will have, that amount in there.
Okay, so just to touch on what Bill said while Mike looks that up. Number one, the override is a political issue, and I don't find myself in this committee as a political organization. I know some members more than some members more than others are engaged in the political process, and that's their right to do so. But as this organization goes, this isn't a political organization. This is the money we have. We allocate it the best we can. I say this is a life and death issue. Now, a life and death issue, if you had a choice and you're sitting at your kitchen table, whether to put food on the table or pay the electric bill, none of those options are good, but you're going to put food on the table. And that's where we are, unfortunately. It's not, nobody's doing here. It's not picking on anybody. That's where we are. So we're saying, okay, are we willing to put somebody's life on the line to save any of this? Like I said earlier, I don't want to repeat myself, of any other department. If the money's in free cash, then I will, and everybody's willing to support that, or a majority is, I'll withdraw my motion and make a new one to take it out of free cash.
So Zach, what you want is to just kind of keep people safe for 1 year, because then what's going to happen next year when these departments that we're
You know what? The
basically
next
giving no
year,
money
other
to this
departments
year-
will. If I was king of this town, I would, even next year, I would continue to fund. I think as a society, that's the basic thing you can do. Protection of life and property. That's the basic thing you can do.
We're
And
not going to have the free cash next year, Zach.
then you're gonna have to cut it from somebody else's budget.
Oh, so we're just going to delay it a year instead of just making the cuts now. We're going to use the free cash this year and then next year make the cuts.
If you didn't have money to put food on your table, you're gonna say, no, we're just not gonna eat this year. We're gonna pay the mortgage, and we'll, and we'll worry about it next year when they throw us out. I'm saying it's a life and death issue. I mean, it's just like your kitchen table budget. You have X amount of dollars. If anybody's grown up, I know I grew up with no money. My parents had those conversations all the time. This is what we got. What are we going to do with it? This is where we are. It's nobody's fault here. But you're saying you want to delay what? You're willing to risk somebody's life? If that's what you're willing to do, then that's fine. But I
If
just
that's how
can't
you
have any
wanna
part of
word
it.
it.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Sandy.
Yeah, Zach, I think, again, to Bill's point, it's a little insulting to sit there and say because we're not funding police and fire that we're willing to risk people's lives. I mean, that's not really a fair statement. When you're trying to put food on your table, you make other cuts in other places in your budget. You don't suddenly try to find money and borrow money and beg, borrow, and steal. You cut in other places. So if you have a suggestion for where to cut in the budget, because to Paula's point, that's what's going to need to happen next year if we use a one-time Band-Aid solution now. This is just not fiscally responsible for a town, for a personal budget, for a business budget, to take and use money that's not recurring one time, as opposed to cutting in other places. If you want to cut someplace else, let's do that, rather than trying to come up with a one-time Band-Aid fix, which we have gotten criticized for. Everyone's gotten criticized for. We've criticized schools for using ESSER funds. All of those one-time fixes are continually come back to haunt us. And so I think if you want to find the money somewhere else and cut somewhere else, again, we're open to that. That's something we need to find and see if someone can suggest, because I'm not hearing those options right now.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Cody.
The next biggest budget that we have any money in, it goes schools, fire, police, and then highway. Highway salaries right now, the town manager recommended budget for next year is $793,745. The next
That's the
highest.
salaries you said, Cody? Sorry.
Yeah.
793 for salaries, yeah.
793, 745. For salary wages for permanent positions. I don't know how much is longevity pay, fringe benefits, incentive pay, all that. But if we eliminated 2 positions, Mike, what would that run? Because looking back at it, I mean, what we expended in 2022 was 687, 2023 was 758. I think they could probably make do. I mean, the roads will suffer. Everything that they maintain will suffer, but at least we would be able to maintain the overtime necessary to keep police and fire fully engaged as they currently are, without eliminating an entire department like the dog officer. The dog officer is $118,000 for that department. That's an easy round number. That's why I chose it. You can eliminate that. It's not life or death. Highway is definitely not life or death either. What do you think, Zach?
Well, the highway can be when it comes to keeping
I
the
think
roads clear
I
of
have a
ice and
different
snow.
view than most here, I think, and to be honest with you, and you guys are probably going to be upset at me for saying it, but I say what's on my mind. I think a lot of the members here have a political agenda that are driving, an override, and that doesn't belong here. And I just, that's what I think. And, just because you're involved in that, want to make a statement, oh, we're going to cut the police and fire. So, we can get,
Tax plays on the fellow members, because that's not fair, Zach.
that's my opinion. That wasn't an attack.
That is an attack. That we're all doing the best here. We're all trying to make decisions based on a really crappy budget and very little money. Attacking people and saying they have political motives is just.
Madam Chair, please control the meeting.
Madam
Okay,
Chair,
so
I'd
Cody
like
made a suggestion about the highway department.
Yeah,
Does
I
anyone
would
have-
like to address cuts this year to keep police and fire fully funded. I'm suggesting that we pull it from highway. I suggest that we pull $300,000 from highway and reduce the salary and wages from $793,745 to $493,745.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Bill.
I I want to say this the correct way. Wouldn't we be better to indicate to the town manager your recommendations aren't working, and here are our priorities. Come back to us with a new recommendation. It should not be our position to say, hey, eliminate these employees. That's not what a finance committee does. That's getting into managing the town, and that's not our position. Our position is to, priorities. And if we don't like what's being presented, say, we don't like this, you need to come back with different numbers. That's up to the town manager to say, this gets eliminated or this doesn't. I'm not in favor of us sitting here going, yes, these employees should be let go. That's not why I'm here.
So Mike, would it be feasible for you to look at this and find $300,000 for us to transfer over to police and fire?
I can tell you right now, there's no way I'm gonna find 300,000 to transfer over. But obviously I'd look at that. I'll talk to Jared, for example, and see what the impacts are on his department of losing 2 more people. We've already taken 1 position. Now we take 2 more at a time when we're adding a bike trail, we're adding sidewalks, we're adding a new council on aging property that's going to have to be maintained by them.
Madam Chair. I mean, Mike, maybe it's not even so focused on that, just to say, make the assumption you have to keep police and fire flat to the department, flat to the department request, the 300 some odd K. How would you go about clawing it back anywhere else? Even
Right.
on budgets?
I'll look at that and see where any possibility would be. And it's good, you guys, you look at schools and you look at police and you look at fire, but all these other departments provide a service to the town. And if you don't have the accounting department and you don't have the treasurer's department, you don't have the inspection department that pulls in $1 million a year so you can fund all these things, you don't have the treasurer's office that can collect the money, you don't have the assessor's office staff in order to be able to assess properties so you get the money. I mean, all that stuff comes into play. And you can only nickel and dime all these departments so long. And police and fire is important, but the overtime is speculative. You don't know. That's why, you wait and see. If you have to add money later on, you can, but there's no guarantee they're going to spend that kind of money.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Paul.
just Mike, police and fire habitually have come back in the fall to tap into either free cash or ambulance reserves or whatever. But historically, we also turn back in at the end of our year money into free cash. So that's why sometimes when I hear about free cash not being a reoccurring, yeah, it's not guaranteed, but a lot of it is actually turned back by some of the departments and stuff.
Right.
They could have spent it. And I know historically in the Wayback Machine that there were administrators that would absolutely in June have a spending holiday just to spend like crazy, just to spend their account out rather than turn it back in to free cash. And I think that mindset has completely changed. I think partly because of the town manager type of system that we went to, so I just throw that out there as food for thought, that I do believe that sometimes free cash is needed to backfill some of the accounts, and that might be a better way of looking at Zach's concern with police and fire, is to relook at it in the fall.
And you can see from turnbacks in the past few years how much did come back from public safety.
So my only concern though, going into this coming fall, is with the reduced budgets all around for all the departments, we're not gonna have the turnbacks that we've had.
Mhm. Next year, that would be a big
After, yeah,
impact. Yeah.
Madam Chair,
yeah, Cody.
I, I know we're playing speculative games, but if just looking at the numbers of gross overtime from 2022, 626,000, 2023, 574,000. The budget on this year was 677. We're at 207 through 12/31, which was half the year. So trend that out. It's, call it $450,000. The recommendation there is 446. It's beneath the last 3 years that we've spent. They're not spending any less time out there. And we know that the budget, it's the salaries go up, the guaranteed rates go up. The negotiated contract with the union gave them whatever 5% it was, not sustainable. We have a good estimation. Do we trust the department heads that gave the estimation of what they need to maintain level service, to maintain Chartley staying open, to make sure that the police station stays open on the weekends? Do we trust it or not? Are we having the conversation about going against the town manager's recommendations and coming up with a number? Because I think from my perspective, I think we were very clear at the outset. We wanted to have this conversation a lot earlier. We didn't. The numbers that came in from the departments came in. The prioritization goes down to the town manager to evaluate where he wants to put the money and make the recommendations. We can go against them. In the past, we've just rubber stamped it. Here we are. Do we want to make a recommendation against what the town manager said and say, okay, take $100,000 out of highway, take $200,000 out of highway? Like, we can go against it. There's nothing that says that we can't make a recommendation against what the town manager's recommending. But
I
sending
agree
it back
with
to
you,
him to
Cody.
do the job that we already asked him to do, I don't see that it's necessary to go back and do that. So we either rubber stamp, we come up with another solution here. But pulling from free cash, the vast majority of money from free cash is not recurring. It's, one-off tax holidays or turnbacks from prior, earmarked things that we didn't spend. It comes from all over the place. It's not guaranteed year over year. And it's part of the reason that we're in this position. So we either make the cuts this year, or we trust that the town manager knows what he's doing and the cuts are going to be made according to the budget that he set.
Madam Chair,
Madam Chair,
Goodness. Steve, I'm gonna let you go first. I haven't heard from you.
appreciate it. So I'm just curious where we are right now. Well, I think we had a motion in a second. The conversations are kind of going all over the map. Okay. I just like to take the article or the motion that we have on the floor right now. Let's vote for that. Let's see where it stands. I think everyone's making good points at this point. I think the town manager's done a good job regarding laying out a budget that we can look at. Obviously, we all have questions. I agree with Zach saying public safety. The one thing I think is kind of unique in this situation is we have a school budget with $30+ million that we haven't really vetted that much at all. We don't go picking by department. We don't go picking by positions. We haven't looked at that. Our largest budget, we don't even have a listing of who the people are in each category with the various components of pay. I think it's kind of surprising. So I just ask that right now that we have a motion and a second on the floor, if we can move forward and finalize that at this point.
Okay, let me just clarify. There's a motion from Zach to transfer money now from free cash. I don't know if I heard a second on that one.
I think we have to vote the motion, the second, to pull from stabilization first. That was his first motion.
Okay. All right. Motion and a second, and just to clarify, 300,000 from stabilization,
Correct. 200 for fire, 100 for police.
200 for the fire department, 100 for the police department. All right. taking
Madam
the vote.
Chair,
Yes, Bill.
one last question. What is the balance of stabilization and, then do the math, what will it be after?
Mike, do you have that?
James is gonna check it.
And is there an article? Did we vote for one? Is it coming up to put money into stabilization, or is that in the fall?
In the fall.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Sandy.
your stabilization FY 24 balance was 3,170,113.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sandy.
And how much in total are we, besides this 300,000, what else, if any, is coming out this budget season?
Out of stabilization? Nothing.
It was
Okay,
just the
thank you.
1.2 million from free cash, Bill. Okay, going for the vote. Anyone else have anything? Okay. Kevin,
No.
Steve,
I agree with Zach regarding the funding, but I can't support taking it from stabilization, so I'm a no.
Tracy, I didn't hear you.
I know also.
Okay, Sandy,
No,
Joe,
No.
Bill,
No.
Paul,
I agree with Steve's sentiment, but no for the stabilization.
Cody,
No.
Zach,
Yes.
I am a no. 9 no, 1 yes. Okay, so are we making, Zach, are you making another motion to take money from free cash?
No.
Okay. Are we going to go back to those budgets, that page of budgets, Mike, then?
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else have questions or comments on this page?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Bill.
um, I guess until we have more clarity as to the whole town hall situation, or the existing town hall, not the one under construction, I'd unfortunately want to see these presented individually. So a yes, no on each one on this page.
Okay. That sounds good. All right, Chair would entertain a motion to recommend the municipal building account 192.
Madam Chair. I make a motion that we accept budget 192 municipal building maintenance, line 570, charges and expenditures in the amount of $164,000 for a total of $164,000.
Second,
Kevin,
No.
Steve,
Yes.
Tracy,
Yes.
Sandy,
yes,
Joe,
No.
Bill,
no.
Yes.
Paul, Cody,
Yes.
Zach,
No.
and I am I'm gonna be a yes on this one. Okay. 6 yes, 4 no. And the next one is police department.
Madam Chair?
210. Yes, Joe.
Make a motion that we accept budget 210, Police Department, line 510, Personnel Services in the amount of $4,182,720. And line 570, Charges and Expenditures in the amount of $237,425 for a total of $4,420,145.
Second,
Kevin,
Yes.
Steve,
No,
Tracy,
No,
Sandy,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Bill,
yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Cody,
No,
Zach,
No.
and I am a yes. 6 yes, 4 no.
Madam
Okay.
Chair,
Yes. Paul.
Paul, just a question for the nose. Is it because we want to make an adjustment? I'm just trying to get my handle around the nose. You know, whether we're trying to support the town manager's recommendations or try to do something different.
well, I can tell you from my perspective, I like
Yep.
to see this fully funded. Based on the department's request.
Okay,
me too.
so should we try the free cash route that Zach alluded to instead of stabilization as a one-time fix, at least for now?
Certainly.
I'd like to see the town manager come back with recommendations to fully fund this and where we could potentially get those funds within the budget process and not potentially use free cash or stabilization.
Fair enough. Thank you.
What about everyone else who voted no, or the other 2 people? Would you prefer to see a different recommendation from the town manager or take from free cash?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Cody.
I agree with Steve. I'd like to see where we could cut, where he would make the recommendations to cut. I mean, it's really tough because we're not professional town managers. And, you know, we can decide unilaterally to take from one and fund the way we want to fund it, and then he's got to deal with the fallout for that. But I would much rather him figure out what that fallout's going to be on the front end.
And Cody, having sat across from Mike on the other side of the table, I will tell you that he does try to sharpen the pencil and beat down even our requests before we even put them in. And I agree that we should allow Mike to do his job.
Okay. All right, fire department.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Joe.
I make a motion that we accept budget 220 for the fire department, line 510, Personnel Services in the amount of $4,734,751. Line 570, Charges and Expenditures in the amount of $274,230 for a total of $5,008,981.
Second,
Madam Chair, comment?
Sorry. Go ahead. Sure, Sandy.
I just want to say that, you know, we can always revisit these, correct? If it comes back with different recommendations. So I just want to make clear that my opinion right now is based on what we have in front of us. If Mike comes back with different numbers and can find that money, I'm fully supportive of increasing those budgets.
That's where I stand as well.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Zach?
Yeah, Mike, what do you have, what is the balance, or James, I think James is still on here, in the ambulance reserve fund?
Give me 1 second. Let me look it up.
While he's doing that, we may want to consider taking ambulance funds and moving them into the fire department as well.
Madam Chair.
Should we ask the chief his feelings on that first?
I think Deputy Chief Wilson is on.
Deputy Chief Wilson, you're on? You listening?
Good evening. Yeah, I'm on.
Hello.
I that's something that I think I'd have to speak to Chief Simmons about first.
Do you know what the ambulance reserve balance is off the top of your head?
You know, it's funny. James gave it to me not too long ago. I know it's about 4.6 million.
I'm trying to look back in my
But
notes.
James can give me the exact amount.
Madam Chair,
Yes, James.
yeah, it's around 4.5 million. But that does not include what we're using already, which is $1 million, I believe, we're using for fiscal year 25.
Yeah, I
Right.
think so.
And I don't know if we're funding any capital out of there too for fiscal year 25. So that would come off the top.
Was there capital, Mike, that we're using?
There was. There
were we
was.
using some, yeah.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Zach.
so there's still well over $3 million. I don't think capital was that much, Mike, if I remember.
No,
I think it was some hoses, 70,000 or something. I know there's already, I think this is on the floor too, but I would make a motion to move it from the ambulance funds, but there's already something on the floor. I think you have to vote on that first.
Yeah, I think we have to vote on this fire budget
Well-
first.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Joe.
Zach could amend the motion for the amount
Okay.
that he wanted with the ambulance funds coming in there.
Okay, I hope I do this right. Correct me if I'm wrong, Joe. I make a motion to add 200,000 from the ambulance funds to the fire department request of 4,734,751.
I'll second that.
One quick
Just for the
question.
record, That would,
So
that would
we
make
would
the
add it to
total-
the total, right?
right,
That
that would make
5 million.
$5,208,981.
and you would have to amend personal services to 4,934,751.
Correct.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, one question.
Sorry, Steve, I think.
Yep. Just a question, Mike, are ambulance funds restricted to the fire department only?
That's what the intent is. And I know before we're very restrictive about what we funded out of capital, had to prove that it had something to do with the ambulance.
Madam Chair.
So, who spoke? I'm sorry.
Cody.
Cody.
But they're a general fund appropriation technically.
If I recall correctly from our joint meeting, Chief Simmons indicated that the recommended budget, even for the EMS, was not going to necessarily support running 2 ambulances at the same time. This is where, like, I feel like we're beyond our scope, where we're trying to line item these things and pulling from, resource or fund levels that Chief Simmons has, an idea of how he's running the budget for fire. And I'm not comfortable saying, take money from ambulance and stick it here and stick it there. And we're gonna recommend funding all of these things when he's using those funds and he's earmarking or setting aside those funds for future expenditures, because buying a new ambulance, buying a new fire truck, maintaining all of those things, like that's what those are set aside for. Yes, it's a revenue source when they created that service, but it's funding itself and it's offsetting the funding of other services related to it. And I'm not comfortable saying, hey, look, there's a stockpile of cash over there. I don't care what you've necessarily earmarked that for and set it aside for to run this the way you're supposed to run it or the way that you think you want to run it. We're going to come in and stick our hand in your piggy bank and tell you where you're going to spend it. It doesn't make any sense to me for us to be doing that at this level, as opposed to going back to them and saying, can you do this? Does this make sense? How is this going to impact if you pull from this in the long run? Because just pulling 200,000 for fire and personnel services, again, is that going to get us into the same situation where it's not necessarily recurring revenue? It was a savings account that was set aside for future things. And then the charges and expenditures under EMS, the request there was 223. Is 201 going to be enough? Do we need to take $22,000 out of that and put it towards that too, so that you can fully staff the EMS? Like,
All right, so Cody, this just goes back to my question of what does Chief Simmons think about this before I would say that we go and do this?
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I
yeah.
could,
Right.
if I could, I would recommend that you approve what I have recommended now. And then I'll meet with Chief Simmons and go over all the long-range plans for the ambulance receipts and the anticipated revenue each year, and then see if that's something that he feels is sustainable.
Okay.
Madam
And then
Chair,
we could come
I
back and
think that
amend
we
it.
already have a motion and a second for this. Did we get a second for this amended budget line item
I believe we
from
did.
Zach?
You did, you did for discussion, yep.
Madam Chair, if we agree to bring this back, I'll withdraw the motion. But I just
Okay.
want to touch a couple of points that Cody made. I agree with Cody that fire funds should not be used in other departments. I think that's for the fire department. Also, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe, and the town accountant or the town manager can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we took in 1.9 million range last year in ambulance receipts. Now, when we're talking about closing Chartley Station and that ambulance doesn't become available, Mansfield shows up, Attleboro shows up, Taunton shows up, you also lose the revenue that comes with that. So the 1.9 that you're collecting starts to fade down because you're losing the revenue of the ambulance calls. So it's a double-edged sword there. So I would be in favor of hearing from Chief Simmons. So I'll withdraw my motion at this time.
I'll withdraw
Okay.
the second, and to Zach's comment, the 1.9, if you're taking $1 million out already this year, you'd be surprised how it barely stays ahead of the game. It just happens that we've had a couple of good years in a row that we haven't pulled a lot from it for capital. So I think you're right, Zach. I think we got to take a good look at that.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I do remember Chief Simmons talking about, kind of like needing this in that event that we lose an ambulance and, needing to fix it or buy a new one.
And
So
Madam
yeah.
Chair, Madam Chair,
Mhm.
even more important than having Mansfield or Attleboro coming in and taking the revenue that we would have gotten that call, it's the fact that we're not giving good customer service by having the person having the heart attack laying on the floor waiting for another town to show up when we should be
Right.
handling it ourselves,
Yes.
And
Okay, so-
Madam Chair, just for the
Yes,
record,
Zach.
we do have 2 ambulances on order that have already been appropriated in previous meetings that are backlogged because of the COVID situation.
Yeah. Okay, so we withdrew that amendment in the second, so now the chair would entertain a motion to recommend this fire department line item.
I already did that.
You already did that, okay. And we had a second?
Yep.
Okay. All right, Kevin,
Yes.
Steve?
No, for the same reasons the budget before.
Okay. Tracy?
No, and for the same reasons as I had before for the police.
Did you say my name, Paula? Sorry.
Yes,
Yes.
I did. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Joe?
Yes, but that, I'm agreeing with the no people. I'd like Mike to meet with Chief Simmons and understand how he feels about the ambulance receipts, and also wondering if it would be possible, if Chief Simmons is amenable to those kind of changes, which he may not be, whether we could actually pull the entire if we could change that number to 300,000 and then move 100,000 of the money that's freed up to police somehow, I'm not trying to tell Mike how to do his job, but hopefully we can make this work.
Bill?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Cody?
No.
Zach?
No.
And I am a yes. 6 yes, 4 no.
Madam Chair,
Okay. Yes, Zach.
before we move on, I mean, back to the town manager. If we were able to get 200,000 from the ambulance receipts to fund the fire department, can we look at ways to raise $100,000 for the police department? And I know, I know we're asking you to, for the impossible, but.
I
do what
mean,
you can.
obviously, yep, I'll look at that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at too, is if there's a way we can move that money, even if it has to go to the fire department, like could it be 300,000 that then frees up 100,000 for the police? Worth a discussion, and it may just not work, but just throwing it out there.
Okay.
With that said, Madam Chair,
Yes, Joe.
I make a motion, we accept budget 230, emergency medical services, line 570, charges and expenditures in the amount of $201,725 for a total of $201,725.
Second.
Madam Chair.
Second. Yes, Cody.
This is adjacent to fire and police, right? This is like the charges and expenditures related to this are in relation to first responder services.
This is an ambulance.
There was a second, right?
Yes.
Okay. Kevin? Okay. Steve?
No, for the same reasons.
Tracy?
No,
Sandy?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Cody?
No.
Sorry, what'd you say, Cody?
No.
Zach?
No.
And I am a yes. And 6 yes, 2 no. I mean, 4 no. Sorry.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Before we
Sandy.
move on, can I just ask Mike that if, as you're looking at these numbers, if there's, I know the ambulance is one scenario, if there's any other scenarios that maybe you can give us different options, and then pros and cons of those options, like what would that be? What would we be losing? You talked about highway, what are the impacts of that? And just kind of give us some
I will.
alternatives to that. That would be great. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any questions about these budgets? Do we also want to go one by one?
So I just want to mention, if I could, in this on this sheet, the only thing that's changed is a reduction in the inspectional department, personal services. I reduced the local inspector and the part-time inspectors, a total of $6,000, just based on the fact that, you know, the building commissioner and the assessor met, and they anticipate that our new growth next year will be 300,000. So I'm anticipating there'll be less inspections, so I've reduced it by the 6,000.
All right, any questions on these budgets?
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Cody?
The worksheet on this does not seem to account for the $8,000 reserve fund transfer that was approved last week for the animal control officer. I think that 93,914.76 was what was carried prior to the reserve fund trust transfer.
Is that right,
It-
Mike? Did
it could
the
be, yeah.
8,000
Yeah, it could be.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Steve.
So one question I have is on the schools. Every other budget that we have provides detailed salary information by individual for all the types of components of pay, incentive pay, longevity, stipends, etc. Why can't we get that from the schools? Have we not asked? Personally, I know I've asked over the past. And then with that said, I'd like to see it broken up into the department or to the expense lines that they're budgeted into, what the counts are for each of those lines. We have no line of sight of that other than a total population count.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Cody.
I believe that was in the school packet that's been provided a couple of times. They have head count line by line of each position within the school department.
Not the information that I received, Cody. So if there is something, please point me in that direction, but I have not seen it.
I'll see if I can find it in the packet that was in one of the Super FunCom meetings.
That would be great.
And Chair,
Yeah, Sandy.
to Steve's point, we didn't get the breakdown like we got last year. We got some general categories, but we didn't get the breakdown. I wasn't sure if that was because some of those positions have not been notified that they're being laid off. So I didn't know if the detail was purposely not there because of that reason. I know Dr. O'Neill had said a couple times that she wanted to let people know this Friday, I think.
Yeah, I
First.
think it was the 26th, she said.
Yeah. So I think, I'm not sure if that's what the holdup is, but I agree with Steve that I would like to see the breakdown of that to the detail we got last year.
And I agree with Sandy on that one, right? But I think we just have to be careful. I mean, we just scrutinized last week several town budgets, and there's only one or two people in those, and we had no problem having conversations about those. So I think we have to more of a balanced approach in that. And then going through some of the budget items, and it's my fault for not asking at that point, I see different things that I'm a little concerned with the strategy. I look at substitute teachers. They're budgeting $5,000 when they've expended well more than that. What's the strategy? Is it because it's a bottom line budget and potentially they hope, not a strategy, that they're going to be funding that at some point throughout the year for something they didn't spend or underspend, which is another benefit of the school budget with a bottom line. The same thing as I'm looking at the custodial increases up there are well above 2.75%. I'm looking at principal secretary, LGN's gone up 8.5%, and several of those positions have gone up more than 2.75%. There's another one that bothers me, there's stipends for the department chairs, not budgeted last year. $45,000 expended so far this year with a budget for 25 or 62, almost 63,000. What's the strategy? If they're not budgeting a line item, what's the strategy? Are they hoping to not spend it somewhere else? And if so, I'd like to request us to really put in that budget the way they're going to spend it. Let's see the budget the way it is actually going to be spent, not the anticipated moving around, if you will.
Mike, does it make sense that Dr. O'Neill and Christine meet with us while we go over this
Yep.
school budget?
Yeah, I'll
Sounds
ask
like
them
there's
if
a lot of
they're,
questions.
I'll ask them if they're available for next Monday. And if you want, just drop me an email on the detail that you'd like to see, and I'll relay that to her.
Madam Chair. Oh, go ahead, Sandy.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, to Steve's point about the salaries increasing, again, I think there's some maybe misunderstanding or missing information for some people that the you look at the steps and lanes, and that has a huge impact on your salary increases. So you're not gonna just see 2.75%. That was the overall increase on the chart, on the grid, so to speak. But like, for example, same thing happened with fire department. You saw your salaries increase by 7.86%. We saw the police departments, theirs went up by 5.77%. Their increase in the request anyway, before the cuts. So again, I think, that's just not reasonable, or, an expectation that you should have to see that 2.75 is going to be reflected in the personnel. That when you look at people getting different degrees and credits and things, and they move across, and then they also move down each year as they get more experience, up until I think 15 years is what the schools have. So, unless you're been teaching over 15 years, you're going to make more than 2.75%. And I think we do have we've had a lot of turnover in the last couple of years, I think, especially in some of the elementary schools. So I think we have a lot on that lower end of the scale that have then the downside of that is that their increases are bigger each year.
And I agree with you on that, Sandy, but we can go to the detail on any of those other departments and see what's driving it, where the schools we can't, because we don't get that detail.
I would agree. I would like to see the breakdown as well, Steve. I can appreciate that.
Madam Chair.
So next Monday, Mike?
Sure.
hopefully?
I'll ask tomorrow.
Yes, Zach.
So on the schools, I mean, it's 2/3 of the budget. I think, touching on what Steve has to say, that should be just a meeting in itself. The schools are on there with all the detail, with the superintendent, and to ask questions. I mean, we've spent how many hours discussing an $8,000 bill for a dog office, and we're just going to vote on $35 million on this? I mean, it doesn't make much sense. I just think the schools 2/3 of the budget should be at least one meeting in itself with nothing else on the agenda. And the second question I have for Mike is on the communication center. Why the $150,000 increase?
Mansfield and Foxborough have been paying $450,000. They paid that last year. We were still at $300,000 because Easton and Norton started a year later in the center. So that's why it's up this year.
And is there anybody else? I know there was talk of other towns signing on. Any news on that?
We had a meeting again last week. We're working with 6 other towns to see if we can bring them in.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Mike, with that said, is there any other anticipated increases in the assessment for bonding or any of the equipment or anything forthcoming?
No, not through the year, no. And if we bring in the other towns, we hope to keep the cost down. So spread it out over 6 more towns, hopefully keep the assessment down. I don't see it being reduced, but hopefully it'll stay pretty stable.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Cody.
Steve, I shared the school budget detail, recognizing it is not the 1% budget detail. I think from the last joint meeting we had, I believe she said she had to notify teachers as of April 26th.
Yeah, she said the
that-
26th.
Yeah, I think that was the date. So there's no way for her to be able to provide a budget with the actual cuts, but it was 29.4 positions that were going to be cut based on the 1% budget that was provided. But this, like that budget detail was in the packet from our, March 25th. Discussion with them. It was also in the joint meeting under the select board. And it's got, if you go back into the worksheets back behind, I recognize that it's not the 1% because they put together the level services budget, which we had asked them to do. So the numbers that are in there do carry fiscal year 22, 23 actuals, and then the budget for fiscal year 24. So it does have line, by position, by department, by school. That's about as detailed as I think I would need, without getting into, who exactly is getting paid how much. But
I was just gonna say, Cody, I was just gonna say that doesn't break it out into the individual teachers. It shows, a couple $1 million for teachers at the L school and the different schools in broad categories. It's not detailed like I think Steve was referring to police fire. It actually shows every individual,
Correct.
Yeah, Madam Chair, we definitely got a more broken down budget last year in the packet.
Okay.
Where it was broken down, so I'm sure that, she has that. And again, I do, think that has something to do with the notifications having not gone out yet.
And I feel we should level set going forward. We expect that in each year's budget.
All right, so we definitely will wait on voting that line item. So we'll do all of these individually on this page. Any other questions on any of the other departments? Okay, hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend the emergency planning budget.
Madam Chair, is there any reason why we can't do the 3 without the school department together? I saw your mouth move, but I did not hear you.
I suppose we could. I thought we were moving to do it line by line, but we can go back to doing it the other way. Just,
Does anyone have any objection to that? Okay.
okay.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we accept budget 240, emergency planning, line 570, charges and expenditures in the amount of $9,720 for a total of $9,720. Budget 241, inspection department, line 510, personnel services in the amount of $248,352, and line 570, charges and expenditures in the amount of $9,975 for a total of $258,327. Budget 290, communication center, line 510, personnel services. Oh, there's nothing there. Line 560, assessment in the amount of $450,000 for a total of $450,000. And budget 292, animal control in line 510, personnel services in the amount of $107,375. And line 570, charges and expenditures in the amount of $11,310. For a total of $118,685.
Second,
Kevin,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Tracy,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Bill,
yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Cody,
yes,
No.
Zach, yes, 9 yes, 1 no. Okay,
You want to keep going?
yep. Do I want to?
Want and need are two different.
Yeah. All right, Southeastern Regional. Anyone have questions or comments on these budgets?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Joe.
I make a motion that we accept budget 306 Southeastern Regional Vocational line 560 assessments in the amount of $1,692,899 for a total of $1,692,899.
Are we going back to?
Second.
So we're going back to budget by budget again, not the whole
Well,
page.
let me, if I could, Madam Chair.
Yeah,
Just one adjustment on this page was under the Board of Health, Personal Services. I reviewed the salary for one of the staff in that office who is planning on retiring this year, not this next fiscal year. They are going to be working, but they're going to retire before December. And so I adjusted the salary based on what the cost would be to replace that person. And so I reduced the personal services from 198,989 to 195,767.
thank you for that.
I'm happy to do them all if people want to do that. Doesn't matter.
Okay,
to
what
me.
about this page? Do people want to do budget by budget or the whole page for this one?
Full page.
Whole page.
All right.
Okay.
So in
Alright,
addition to
whole
that, budget 308, regional agricultural school line 560 assessments, one for in the amount of $149,950 for a total of $149,950. Budget 420 highway line 510 personnel services in the amount of $903,564. Line 570 charges and expenditures in the amount of $133,050. Line 580 surface treatment in the amount of $14,000. Line 581 repairs to private ways in the amount of $1,000 for a total of $1,051,614. Budget 423 snow removal, line 570 charges and expenditures in the amount of $80,000 for a total of $80,000. And budget 510 Board of Health, line 510 personnel services in the amount of $195,767, and line 570 charges and expenditures in the amount of $6,250 for a total of $202,017.
Second.
Kevin,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Trace,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Cody,
No.
Zach,
No.
I am a yes. Okay, we have 8 yes, 2 no.
But- Madam Chair?
Yes, Paul, did I
Just-
skip you?
No,
Oh,
no,
I
just an
didn't. Okay.
observation. The Southeastern Regional, I think her name was Holly, the superintendent, was talking about the formulas and it came out to over $17,000 for a student from Norton to go there.
Mhm.
And if I'm doing the math right, it's only $10,000 for a student to go to Bristol Aggie. Isn't that the same formulas? We got 15 students going to Bristol Aggie and it's only 150,000.
Different
So it just
budgets,
didn't make sense to me.
different budgets set by different boards.
Well, I thought one was, she was saying she was absolutely the bare bones minimum allowed for the Southeastern Regional, so I'm just surprised it would be that much lower if they're doing bare bones at the Aggie. Just an observation, Cody, you know?
I don't know if agricultural schools are on a different level than vocational schools. I couldn't answer that.
Yeah, okay, just an observation.
Yeah, Madam
Interesting.
Chair, my suspicion is based on the curriculums and the labs and things that are needed, that the costs are going to be wildly different.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions, discussion on these budgets?
I'm just
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Bill.
I forget what budget we pulled. Is it the 17,000, 19,000?
The
So
reserve fund.
so
reserve
is this where it gets into the library?
Yeah, I believe so.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Sandy.
I mean, I know it's only a dent, but wouldn't it make more sense to put it into police and fire or police or fire? Since we're prioritizing those.
Seems like that's how the conversation has gone tonight. How does everyone else feel?
Agree.
Good.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Bill.
I'll be honest, I'm not sure, maybe to Cody's point, a meeting or two ago, it's low hanging fruit. I'm not sure what 15,000 is really gonna do for police and fire. That still leaves a gaping hole. And I wasn't a fan of this whole thing to begin with, but if you got the money to make something whole versus just making the hole a little smaller, I guess I'd go to filling the hole entirely. And 17,000, whatever, isn't gonna do bleep for police and fire.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Joe.
I tend to agree. It would be nice to have something be whole, and it's a sort of a black eye to say that we're one of 6 communities in Massachusetts where the libraries aren't fully accredited. So,
Madam Chair?
Yeah, Paul.
So, I agree. The Brian Salters did a admirable job bringing up the fact that they've been on borrowed time with the COVID, allowing them to look the other way, and that they might actually get decertified if we don't do it. But also, I was impressed by the parent who got up there with the daughter that did the pictures, kind of showing, and he made the comment that, the library is probably going to be more sought after than ever, with the way things are getting whacked around at the schools and everything. So I think that we ought to put the funds that they needed, and I'm not sure what that figure actually was, Mike, that the libraries were looking for.
It would be the 609, 655.
So how much of an increase is that, Mike? 17?
Yep.
Just under 17.
just shy of 17, yeah.
So if you need that in the form of a motion to move it forward, I certainly would entertain adding that back into the library.
I can include.
We could
it in
probably
my
go
number.
line by line on this page and then make
Yeah.
that amendment there.
Okay.
When we get to the library.
What if we were to group everything except the library and then do the library separate?
Okay, we can do that too. Sorry.
It's okay, I'm just trying to power through here.
All right.
So Madam Chair,
Yes, Joe.
I make a motion that we accept the following budgets. Budget 522, Public Health Nurse, Charges and Expenditures, line 570 in the amount of $12,000 for a total of $12,000. Budget 541, Council on Aging, line 510, Personnel Services in the amount of $152,459, and line 570, Charges and Expenditures in the amount of $57,100 for a total of $209,559. Budget 543, Veterans Agent, line 510, Personnel Services in the amount of $105,820. Line 570, Charges and Expenditures in the amount of $3,150. And line 579, Veterans Benefits in the amount of $150,000 for a total of $258,970. And budget 630, Recreation, line 510, Personnel Services in the amount of $30,849. And line 570, Charges and Expenditures in the amount of $19,891 for a total of $50,740.
Second?
A motion and a second. Kevin,
Yes.
Steve?
One quick question, sorry.
Yeah,
On
no
the
problem.
on the veterans benefits, if we cap it at 150,000, I know it's a reimbursable fund from the state. Do we have to say no to a veteran if it goes over that 150?
No, you would have to provide the services and the veterans agent would have to come back to you for a reserve fund transfer.
Okay. All right. It worries me, concerns me, but I will say yes.
Tracy,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Cody,
Yes.
Zach?
No.
9 yes, 1 no.
Madam
Okay,
Chair.
so the library line item.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we accept the budget budget 610 library with the following changes. Line 570, other charges and expenditures at the amount of $609,655 for a total of $609,655.
Second.
A motion and a second. Kevin,
Yes.
Steve,
No.
Trace,
Yes.
Sandy,
No.
Joe,
Yes.
Bill,
Do we need to say where the difference is coming from? Otherwise, yes.
I don't think we do, because Mike, you
No.
already took it out of the reserve fund, correct?
Yep, you did with your recommendation.
Yeah. So, sorry, Bill, what did you say? What's your vote?
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Cody,
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
I am a yes. 8 yes, 2 no.
Think you're done.
Are we though?
This
Oh,
1% budget.
no, yeah, you haven't voted.
Oh,
So
one more.
just to go back here, I know last time, employee benefits and unemployment. I know that at the meeting we had with the school department, they had said that 19 teachers were going to be laid off and anywhere from 19 to 24 people would be laid off. So what I figured here was 19. And I think we should go with that for now. If 24 people get laid off, I doubt that 24 people are going to stay on unemployment. Some of them are getting jobs. Probably, hopefully, most of them are getting jobs if they get laid off in this economy. So if we had to, we can decide, we could add money again in October to the unemployment and see what happens between now and October. But I think this would be more than enough to get us through for unemployment, and then the health insurance is reduced accordingly.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Sandy.
I do want to point out that teachers, since their contract ends in June, unless they're a summer contract of some sort, could all collect unemployment in the summer.
Mhm.
So they, even if they get a job in September, they could collect all summer.
Right. And this, what I planned on with the 341,000 was through October, so it would get us to November 1st if we had 19 people that were at the max on unemployment and all were collecting till November 1st.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Cody.
So if we under budget on this unemployment comp in the fall, we would have to pull from free cash.
Correct.
essentially. Okay. And for the record, that's what I think free cash should be going towards, is stuff like this. We shouldn't have to be carrying 341,000 in a budget year over year for unemployment. So
Right.
that's, in my opinion, proper use of free cash in the fall.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Zach.
to Sandy's point, I know my wife switched jobs last year, and she gets paid every other week, and she got paid to September, and the medical benefits from one job to the next lasted till September. So is that accurate that they would be able to collect June 1st? Can somebody just verify that?
I know that for a fact, just Zach, because I know I'm collected. If they're let go, not June 1st, June 30th, I think, or June, whatever the end of the school is. Your paychecks are stretched out through the year, but you're not an employee after June.
But they'll carry the medical insurance till through the summer?
Yeah, I'm not sure how the medical
Yeah.
insurance works.
Yeah, that's good. They know if they're on unemployment and they're laid off, they wouldn't be on the medical insurance. They may be able to collect unemployment. That's one of the big things that never gets corrected in the state, that teachers that are technically compensated for a whole year could get laid off, could get hired back, but they still get to collect during the summer. They should, my idea is they shouldn't be able to collect until the school year starts and they're still don't have a job.
Yeah, Mike, the reason I asked that is my wife resigned from a position last year, and they carried our insurance through September 1. You know, she resigned at the end of the school year and it was done, but our
Okay.
insurance was carried to September 1 until she got a new job.
Well, she was
kept
probably
paying it.
she was probably getting her paycheck spread out over the
Correct.
whole summer. Yeah,
Correct.
okay.
Questions or discussions for employee benefits or unemployment compensation? Okay, hearing nothing, Chair would entertain a motion to recommend
Oh, Madam,
budgets. Yes, Cody.
I want to throw out a hypothetical. On the unemployment compensation, let's say it is 340,000, 341. We know it's going to get adjusted one way or another. What's the harm in having to come back for more in the fall versus carrying a $341,000 line item in the budget when we're already tight? Because we're already using 1.2 million or whatever from free cash into this budget. What's the difference between like intentionally underfunding this line item budget and having to pull more from free cash in the fall?
So I can look at that. I'll check with the treasurer collector and see when the bills come each month to see how far behind they are. So, we could take October, for example, and not fund October because we'd be having a town meeting, and maybe even September, but I'll check with the town clerk, town treasurer, and see when the bills come.
This might be an
So if you
easier-
want to wait on it, we can
Table
wait
this
on.
one.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Sandy.
I'm also noticing employee benefits are 500,000 that we cut, right? So that, because of those cut positions. So that's also somewhat of a guess.
Right.
I guess, Cody, to your point, it's kind of it's not even a wash. It's a little bit more of a cut than a. So yeah, we're putting an extra 300,000 in unemployment, but we're taking out 500,000 from employee benefits.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Bill.
weren't we the body a week or two ago who said to Mike, hey, unemployment isn't enough? Just saying, we're the ones that caused it to increase. So find it comical that now we're saying, put it down again.
And Madam Chair, if I could, to follow up on what Sandy was saying, if unemployment, if we don't need that much, well, then we know we're gonna need more possibly in health insurance. So if we leave it here, we can always move it in the fall from unemployment to health insurance, rather than have both accounts short.
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
I just want to respond quickly to Bill. So my memory of the conversation about this, I think last week, the weeks blend together, was that there was a question on what that unemployment compensation was based on, the number of employees laid off. So I don't think we were necessarily asking for it to be increased. We were just trying to get a clarification on what that number was based on. And Zach?
Yeah, I was just going to say that the school layoffs too are a moving target. I mean, you just even just the last joint meeting we had, she said she may go from $30 a student to $100 a student. The federal funding hasn't come in. They don't really have all their numbers until sometime in the middle of the summer. So that could go either way in regards to the layoffs. I think she's using her best estimates at this point of what she thinks is going to happen, but it's always subject to change if she gets more federal funding, if she, just like we should discuss at the meeting.
Yeah.
So are we holding off on both of these budgets or just 9/11?
Well, if you move forward on these budgets as is, I think you'd be fine until October. And maybe we have to lower unemployment insurance in October, but we might have to put that into the health insurance if the layoffs aren't as bad as we thought.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Cody.
So just, Mike, just to put a finer point on this for my own brain. If we're looking at employee benefits and unemployment comp kind of in tandem or in conjunction with each other, we wouldn't have to wait until the end of the year to do a turn back for free cash because we didn't spend or we underspent or whatever the case may be. We could have a better idea of what it looks like in the fall and transfer from one line item to the other.
Correct.
Could that also potentially mean we could transfer it to somewhere else? If we know the employee benefits, like whatever it doesn't necessarily have to go from unemployment to employee benefits or vice versa. It's if we're well under that 341,000, then we could look at moving it from that line item to a completely different department.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so do we want to move forward on voting to recommend these budgets?
Madam Chair, I don't have a problem either way, but you can also wait to hear from the superintendent next week if that's what you choose.
Madam Chair,
I don't know if waiting for the superintendent till next week would matter too much, because like you were saying, Zach, things could even change in June.
True. It's a moving target.
Yeah.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Cody.
I'm comfortable recommending these as they are. If we want to move them tonight, voting no on the other big ticket items was to figure out where we potentially pull from, and I don't see it potentially being pulled from this. So I'm fine with recommending these as presented.
All right.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Joe.
I make a motion that we accept the following budgets. Budget 910, employee benefits, line 510, personnel services in the amount of $4,156,463. Line 511, other personnel services in the amount of $8,627,769. Line 570, charges and expenditures in the amount of $633,000 for a total of $13,417,232. And budget 911, unemployment compensation, line 570, charges and expenditures in the amount of $341,266 for a total of $341,266.
Second,
Okay, motion and a second. Kevin,
Yes.
Steve,
Abstain.
Trace,
yes,
Sandy,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Bill,
yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Cody,
Yes.
Zach.
No.
I am a yes. Okay, so we have 8 yes, 1 abstain, 1 no. Okay. That's all you have for us tonight, Mike.
That's it. I'll see some of you Wednesday.
Yes, Joe will be graciously chairing the meeting on Wednesday evening. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, take
I
it
will
easy
not
on
be
me, guys.
present.
And I'll be at EDC meeting on Wednesday at Bog Iron Bruin.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Zach.
So what is I'm just curious on the process going forward here. Are we gonna talk about a 3%, a $4 million budget and a $6 million budget, or is that gonna be after the town meeting?
So I believe that Mike will still have to go through those budgets.
We will. I can tell you what I would like to do. I'm going to bring it up at the select board meeting Thursday night. I would like to Thursday night schedule an election, and we have to be at least 35 days from that time. On May 13th, so the election would be after May 13th. On May 13th, we could have town meeting and do everything but the budgets. Have the vote first, and then come back to town meeting for the budgets. So, because I just envision total confusion at town meeting with 3 budgets and trying to explain 3 budgets to people.
Okay, wait a minute,
Whereas-
Mike, can you just repeat what you said? So you'd not want to present the budgets to town meeting on May 15th?
Right.
You'd want to
It-
keep that article out of it, out of the warrant?
That's what I'd want to do. I'd schedule the election, hold off on the budget discussion until after the vote. So we know whether we're doing a 1% budget and a $4 million override, or a 1% budget and a 6.5 million. So we only have 2 budgets that we have to iron out and present at town meeting rather than have
So
3.
you'd want a special town election first that would
Right.
choose which override
Right.
budget.
But
And
that's
then
not
have
my,
another town meeting to present just the budgets.
correct.
And you were gonna talk to the select board on Thursday about this.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question on that? On the
Mhm.
election part, Mike?
Yep.
So I'm a little confused on how that works. If you're gonna have 3 things on the ballot and it's gonna say $6 million, $4 million, or no override. And how exactly is that calculated? So I go in there, I have vote 1 option, 2, what am I voting for?
Right. I actually emailed the attorney today and asked her, can you write the question and then can you explain how the process works to me after that? So
Because I mean,
it's too bad we don't have ranked choice voting here.
Yeah,
So-
exactly. I was saying, if 30% of the public votes for, let's say, a $6 million override, and then 30% of the public votes for a $4 million override, and then 40% of the public votes for no override, then the override wins. Isn't that we don't have ranked choice voting here. How
Right.
exactly does that work?
And then the
I
town
mean-
meeting would present those two override budgets.
So if
But it would fail the
40%,
election.
right, if 40% of the people vote no override, you wouldn't have an override.
Oh.
So I mean, so by
I misheard you,
immediately,
Zach.
I think
by
it's just
immediately
like
doing that-
candidates, whoever gets the most vote out of the three candidates is the winner.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, Sandy.
I did find a sample ballot for a different town, and it's written as two questions. So we would be seeing it as two questions. One would be, do you want a $4 million override? Yes, no. A second question, do you want a $6.5 million override? Yes, no. So I think that's the
Right.
from what I've seen from other towns. So you wouldn't have if you vote no on both, you don't want an override. You could
Right.
vote yes on both, and the one that gets majority and is higher wins, so to speak. Or you could just vote for one.
so the way am I understanding this correctly? That a majority of the people in town, let's just say hypothetical, vote for an override of some kind, and it could still fail at the ballot box
I
based
think,
on the three choices.
but I think the idea is that if you vote for a $6.5 million, maybe you could also vote for the 4 million, right? If you really want an override, you'd vote for both, or you just vote for 4 million if you don't like the higher number.
I just think my personal view is that just causes confusion to people going to the ballot box. I'm not sure how that's going to be explained. I don't know. You're waiting for the attorney to come back to you, Mike?
Yeah,
If you could share that with the rest of us, that would be
will.
interesting because
I'll let you know.
I'm still confused.
Now,
Madam Chair.
one second, Bill. So say the select board does not want to go this route after Thursday. What does our schedule look like to get through two more budgets before we have to post the warrant? Are we on schedule to do that?
That will be tough.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, sorry, Bill was first.
Well, Mike might have just answered my question. I'm now a little confused in if we all of a sudden seem to have more time, if we're not necessarily deadlocked to a budget, then what's the purpose of Wednesday's meeting? Because if you're extending it out, then
I think
No.
We
Wednesday's
have to have the
meeting,
meeting. It was posted today.
and
we don't have
we
to have it,
weren't,
you can
you
cancel
weren't
it.
doing budget at the
Yeah.
meeting on Wednesday.
We're trying to
And he
get
hasn't
through
got
the warrant
approval, Bill,
articles.
from the select board yet to do that. He's got to ask the select board. So
Right.
they could say no.
And that their meeting's after our Wednesday scheduled meeting. We have to plan accordingly to, I guess, plan A of going through three budgets in a
Yeah.
short amount of time.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, Sandy.
Can I ask another question for Mike? And then the 4 million and the 6.5 million. When is it going to be decided how that's sort of even just split general government versus schools? Is that something that you've come up with? Is that something the select board needs to weigh in on? Who kind of has to come up with those priorities?
Well, the way I anticipate it was that I would take it just like I do any budget. I would just prepare my recommendations based on us having $4 million more and present them to you, which then you can review and say, no, we don't want to do that. We want to do this.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Cody.
Two things. First, everything that has been communicated to the public to this point has been that there would be 1%, 4 million, 6.5. So you can literally see what it is you're voting for as opposed to just ethereal. Here's a number. We're going to throw it out there. Vote for it, yes or no. You don't really know what you're getting for it. So I don't understand why we would change the communication that has been had with everyone at this point, which is exactly that, like here, but what was the point of that joint meeting? We're just gonna go,
Right.
just,
Yeah. The whole plan, yeah, in that joint meeting, it was discussed that doing it this way, we're presenting the budgets at a town meeting to be able to answer questions and, be clear about everything to the town was kind of the way to go, as opposed to them not.
and
Just
having
seeing it on a
department
ballot
heads
first.
present what exactly they're like. Here's the allotment of 4 million, like the option at 4 million. Here are the things that fire will keep. Here are the things that police will keep. Here's the things that schools will keep. Here's the things that council on aging will keep or add or whatever. Like that was the whole point, was here's what 4 million option gets you. Here's what $6.5 million gets you. And
So-
whether or not, like, you have a legitimate discussion. Here are all the cuts that we're actually talking about. Here's all the people that have been noticed that they're getting laid off. Here's a $4 million option and the people that wouldn't have to be laid off. Here's a $6.5 million option, the people that not only won't get laid off, but we could add additional positions. Because we're talking about, everybody gets stuck on fire and police and schools, but we're also talking on council on aging and highway department and veterans and like everything else that we're talking about here. The whole point there was literally this is what you're voting for, instead of saying, yeah, raise your taxes $4 million. We don't really know what it's going for. We'll figure that out later.
Why wouldn't we have that before the ballot vote? We could,
Because
I
you're
mean,
saying we were
just the-
gonna skip it at town meeting, skip
but
that.
we could still have some discussion on if a 4 million override passed, this is what would be added back if a 6.5 added, but just a suggestion, whatever, as I said, it's up to the board what they want to do.
But you're saying that those numbers would still be at town meeting, or those numbers are just going to be on the ballot, and then once the determination on the ballot, then it goes to town meeting to vote on the
Right.
allocation of it. That's the opposite of what we discussed in our joint meeting, which was, here's the allocation, determine whether or not you want to vote on it, and then send it to a ballot.
And I think that was based on the fact that we weren't going to make the April town election, so there was going to have to be a special election. I don't know if the thought was that we weren't going to be able to have, the thought was we weren't going to be able to have that before town meeting, so we got to go to town meeting and then go to the ballot. But either way,
But Mike,
Hold
Madam
on,
Chair?
Sandy had something to say,
Yeah,
Paul.
okay, yep.
Hold on.
I just wanted to point out one of the things that I think Lauren Goldberg said was that if you don't have it at the town meeting, you'd want to have some, public information sessions to present budgets. Because the advantage of having it at the town meeting is that that is your information session, right? You can present and you can explain everything and have it all laid out. If we did not do that, then I think we would need to have some information sessions to explain the three budgets and still have those numbers worked out, to Cody's point, right? That we still need to see where those amounts were going.
And those numbers would be worked out prior to a ballot vote?
yeah,
Can I ask how much time has been spent on the 4 million and $6.5 million options? Like how far along the process you are with that?
I know what, I think I had it at the joint meeting, what if we got a $4 million override, what I would recommend adding back already. I have that on the town side, I know. And now I'll have to work on 6.5 million.
Madam Chair.
I think Paul had something first, Zach. Paul, did you still want to speak?
Yeah, Mike, if we have it read at the town meeting and we present the three budgets
Mhm.
and the 1% passes and the other two don't, then there's no need of a town meeting.
A town election, right?
a town election, correct? So I'm just not sure why we don't go ahead and present the three budgets, right at the town meeting as proposed, and then, only have the election if we need it.
Zach.
I know nobody likes to listen to me, but if they want any success at all in this, they need to come to one number. I mean, I know nobody watches these meetings, but I just think this is just my personal view. Seeing we're in the editorial section of the meeting at this point, is come up with one number, whatever that number is, because this confusion, where people are going to go in the ballot box, and again, we even the town manager at this point doesn't understand the rules of this. How do you expect the people to? But that's my 2 cents.
Anyone else have further discussion on this or anything else?
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Cody.
I'm just curious what the rules around or the laws around public hearing, and I know it's like, that's why we have to have the Wednesday meetings, because we haven't gone through all the articles on the warrant, so we have to make a determination, final recommendations on all that before the public hearing. Is that?
No.
Is it just
So
on
no,
the-
to my understanding is we were just trying to use as much time as we can to get through everything we have to get through. We have to still vote on all of the articles. I assumed up until just 10 minutes ago that we still had to go through 2 more budgets. So just in the interest of the time we had left, we needed to schedule a couple more meetings to fit everything in. Not necessarily trying to get through it before Monday,
Okay.
just getting through it
that
before
was-
we have to post the warrant.
Yeah, so the warrant, like the posting of the warrants, like the final drop dead date, but Wednesday's meeting is gonna be the non-budget items in the articles that we're going through.
Plan.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Zach.
one other thought, I seeing there may be a little bit more interest this year than the previous years I've been here. Has there been anybody give any thought about having this public hearing in person someplace where people can show up rather than virtual?
So we've already posted it as a virtual, Mike, is that?
Right. It's already been
Okay.
advertised.
Yeah.
Is there, Madam Chair,
Yeah,
just to
Cody.
Zach's point, as long as, I mean, is there anything? If people wanted to gather in a location and host the webinar discussion for town hall and still, I mean, would that be against the rules to say there will be a venue where we're hosting it but like everything's gonna be online? I'm not opposed to having like if people want to, I just don't know if it's breaking any rules since it's been posted as an online meeting.
I mean, if a group of people gather around one computer, that's not an issue.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a public forum at that single.
As long as
computer station.
as long as there's not a majority of the finance committee in that room.
Okay, anything else? Any other
Nope.
discussion? I did send minutes to everyone. Honestly, I haven't looked at them at all. So we can definitely table minutes to when we have a little bit less on our plate. at a future meeting is my recommendation with that. But if anyone feels different, feel free.
I agree.
Okay.
I didn't get a chance to look at them at all, so.
Yeah. Okay, hearing no more discussion, no questions, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
Kevin?
Yes.
What? Okay, sorry. Steve,
Yes.
Tracy,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Cody,
Yes.
Zach.
Yes.
Okay, I too am a yes. All right, good night, everyone.